Hey guys, welcome back to another episode of the Landlord Chick podcast. So today's episode is going to be a little bit of a chatty episode. Of course, every episode is chatty because it's me talking. But what I mean by a chatty episode is I'm going to tell you what's kind of been going on in the past couple months in my portfolio, what we've been doing. And I'm also going to talk about some of the coronavirus stuff yet. So I've got a lot that I kind of want to chat with you guys about, bring you up to speed on, and kind of take you behind the curtain as far as what's going on in my real estate portfolio and a little bit on the property management side as well. Building a real estate portfolio is as much about buying properties as being a de facto entrepreneur. I'm Karina Ufinger. I'm a multi-property investor, rental management company CEO, and also a landlord coach. I'm going to show you the systems and knowledge you need to thrive as a real estate entrepreneur. From your first property purchase to building a portfolio of passive income where you work less than 5 hours a week, you'll learn the essential information and skills to build a profitable portfolio and live the life you truly want. Whether you're well on your journey or just starting out, you're in the right place. Welcome to the Landlord Chick podcast. So this week I kind of want to pull back the curtain on some of the things I've been doing the past couple months with my portfolio and just sort of show you sort of the ins and outs of what it's been like to kind of run my portfolio over the past, 4 or 5 months since I think I did a chatty little episode with you guys. So for starters, we've been sort of throwing a couple big curveballs in the past couple months with our properties. Number one, we got forced into a situation of removing an 1860s chimney out of one of our rentals. So this involved going up into the attic and bringing it down out of the attic and down as much as we could into the top floor apartment. But yet we can only go so far because there's still the firebox, which is like the ornate fireplace, intact in the unit beneath it. So we're really just trying to take as much weight off the chimney as we possibly could because, and this is a horrible description of it, but in the basement, we noticed it was like the fall of last year before the unit became vacated at the top, that the chimney looked like a obese person that had exploded after a buffet. I apologize, but that's basically the way I've been describing it to everyone, because on one side of the chimney in a storage room, it literally looked like a piece of dynamite went off in there because like the middle of it was blown out. There were bricks just blown everywhere, but yet there were like sections on the ends that were still intact on the one side. But then on the flip side of it, so on the side that was visible from the main part of the basement, huge cracks running down it, and cracks that were previously like fixed with masonry work before were now cracked again. So it was obvious that this chimney was in dire straits. And it was not exactly something we were planning on doing at that moment. We were coming off of doing 1, 2, 3 flips. And by flips, I mean turnovers, meaning that we had tenants vacate. 2 of these tenants were long-term tenants, and I mean long-term as in they were original tenants for us 4 years ago. And they probably had lived for their 6 years before we bought it. So seriously long-term tenants. We knew these were going to be units that when they came to us, were going to require a lot of work, but we just weren't planning on getting 2 of them at the same time. So we got these 2 vacancies that we're working on. Then we get the news that this person's moving out, and we realize we're really sort of at the point of live or die with this chimney. So now we're forced in the situation of removing the chimney. Now, chances are you've never had the fun of dealing with having to remove a chimney. It's not fun. It's not easy. And it's actually really difficult to get effectively outsourced. I think I mentioned it at some point in the podcast, but I had received quotes for the chimney removal for between $28,000 and $36,000. I certainly am not sitting on that load of money, because if I was, I wouldn't have roofs that are limping past their lives, and I wouldn't have driveways that are still gravel. So obviously I didn't have this money. So it literally came down to just I guess, investor sort of stubbornness and saying, okay, I guess I'm going to go in the attic and we're going to remove this chimney. So my husband and I and one of my maintenance team members from my property management company, we started to clean out the chimney in the attic, and that was a horrible situation. I mean, I had to get my tetanus shot updated after one day because I had 10 different puncture wounds on my hands and my arms, and probably I think even one on my head a little bit. So this was like a horrible situation, and we were really struggling with it. Then I decided that, well, there's this trash removal guy who offered to take out basically the attic part of the chimney and all the way down to the base of the floor in the upper unit for $500. I'm like, you know what? I can't pass that up at this point because we've been literally struggling with this thing for weeks at that point. So they took out that portion of the chimney. We came back in, we took it down a little bit further, again, to remove as much weight as we possibly could off of this chimney. And it's actually not an exaggeration when I say at this point, we have probably removed about 2,700 pounds of weight from this chimney. So even though there's a large chunk of the chimney that's still intact and is going to remain intact for quite a bit, I tend to think the chimney is breathing a sigh of relief because we've taken off that much weight from it. So even if the basement portion of it looks like a freaking war zone, I'm breathing a little bit easier because we have so much of that weight now taken off of the chimney. Now, I do know that when the lower unit vacates, it's likely going to make the most sense to remove the rest of the chimney, hopefully keep the firebox because it is a nice, ornate, original 1860s firebox. So it's got a great mantle, it's got things like that. But you know what? I might not be able to keep it, and I have to come to terms with that. So we've been working on that. We've been working on that for about 60-ish days now. We're finally to the point now where we are framing up the walls where this chimney used to be, putting in a new floor in the closet because now there's, well, a gaping hole where there used to be a chimney. Obviously can't have that there. So we yesterday we framed in the floor, and then when we framed in the actual walls today, later in the week we'll go back, we'll put down a piece of plywood for the floor, which technically looking back on it, that should have been the first thing we did today, but we were just so focused on getting the darn framed walls up that logic totally failed as far as stopping at the hardware store to get a piece of plywood to screw down. And then, you know, we should have, because we were reaching into this pit, this chimney pit, to grab tools that were being kicked over the ledge, or like 12 screws that we were dropping while we were trying to drill in the 2x4s for the frame. And it was like, really? We should have really done that. So we've still got like about 8 days of work in there. And then finally we'll be able to get that unit on the market. Originally, the plan was to have this unit down longer because I want to put in a furnace in this unit. This has baseboard heating, and being an 1860s home, we've never had a tenant last more than one winter, and that's because of how expensive it is to heat that unit. So I want to actually, next time around, put in a furnace in this closet area that we freed up where the chimney used to be. And what's great about that is once we do that, we can get rid of the big, long baseboard heaters that exist on the walls, which will then free it up for us to do a massive kitchen rehab. Because right now, the other kind of crummy part about this unit is the fact that the kitchen and the living room are combined, and it really, really screams like studio setup because the oven is a 24-inch oven. So it's a really small oven. You have at most 10 inches of counter space. This is like an efficiency kitchen to the max. Like, it's the smallest kitchen ever. But with the way the unit's set up between these big, long original windows, and then also having a long baseboard heater next to that, we don't have a lot of wiggle room as far as maneuvering stuff around. Once we get rid of that baseboard heater and we switch over to central heat, we can actually move like the refrigerator down. We can give them a little more counter space. We can have the oven come out where the refrigerator is right now. And even though it's not going to be like a massively great kitchen for a culinary person, it's gonna be better than what they've had before, because really, I don't mean to sound stereotypical, but the kitchen that's in there right now is really sort of a bachelor kitchen. If you're feeding more than two people, it's gonna be difficult to cook for that in there. So I do tend to think that that's been another issue with the unit, but I really truly think that the biggest part of it is what it costs to heat that place. I paid $140 in December. It wasn't that cold of a month. Granted, there was a gaping hole going up to the attic, but it's still, I mean, if I'm setting it for, like 55 degrees vacant, and that's the heating bill, the heating bill for occupied has to be astronomical. You know, I heard from the previous owner that tenants were paying somewhere in the ballpark of between like 250 and 300 to heat that place. And hey, I can say I would not be paying that for a one bedroom, because that's what I pay for my house right now. So I would not be paying that to heat a one bedroom. So I can certainly see why people are exiting after their first winter in that unit. So that's what we've kind of been caught up right now. We also are still in the process of flipping one of the ones I was talking about earlier that is a really, really major rehab. This one, the person moved into it like about 10 years ago. They really moved into it as is with the previous property manager. And so we've had to do a lot of work. So we've had to do subfloor work in one of the bathrooms. We've had to replace the tub surround and actually do some stud replacement for the tub surround. We've also had to remove 1960s drywall that we honestly limped together, kind of like limped along way too long. I mean, but it was a hard thing to do when it's occupied. This is the person's bedroom. Yeah, the wallpaper is peeling, but if you've never removed wallpaper, it's kind of a big deal. And if you're not going to put wallpaper back up, you need to skim coat it and everything. And that was not something we were interested in doing with the tenant in there. So I guess luckily for us, his life situation changed. He found love. His love happened to have two children. So obviously his one bedroom apartment wasn't going to be the place for them to live. So we ended up with this unit back. We got it back. We actually got it back. I am not joking. We got it back March 19th of 2020. And at least here in Wisconsin, that was about like 6 days before the state got shut down, and we were shut down for like a good 3 months. So unfortunately, that meant that unit sat for 3 months with no work on it. And that's really an uncontrollable thing. Sure, here's the thing. I don't want to say if we were daredevils, but if we were less concerned, or maybe if we didn't have underlying health conditions, or if we didn't have elderly parents, maybe sure, we could have been going there and working on the unit, things like that. But in the grand scheme of things, as a priority, keeping ourselves safe and like my parents safe and our family members safe was like top priority. So we didn't really feel like rolling the dice and going there and working on the unit. So then we get to it was like July, we start working on the unit again. And then we got hit with the other two vacancies. So we're working on those other two vacancies. And unfortunately, one of them, again, wasn't really the easiest vacancy. A lot of work to be done in it. And what was kind of sad about that unit was that it was one we had turned over before. We turned it over about like 2.5, 3 years ago, but it just required so much work. We ended up having to do a new bathroom floor, and then the new bathroom floor led to a new toilet, a new flange, and things like that. We had some demons with the plumbing that we're trying to sort of tame in there regarding sewer and things like that. So that one really took a lot out of us. And then we got thrown into another one right after that, which that one was a little bit easier, but still it was a time-consuming thing. And so we really had boom, 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 boom going on. Then we got this one with the chimney. And so now we're circling back to this like original vacancy from March of last year. My plan is absolutely positively to have both units on the market May 1st. The one with the chimney, doesn't have a chimney anymore. The one that had the chimney, it will be going on the market probably in the next couple weeks. And then the real fun begins, because we've already replaced 2 roofs, by the way, this year. So we are March 22nd recording this, and I've already replaced 2 roofs this year. So again, you can see how the best laid plans are not really working out. So we've replaced two garage roofs. And by two garage roofs, I mean the front and back of a garage roof on a 3-bay garage. This was after, in late fall of last year, we replaced the rear half of the ranch level of this odd shaped quad that we have. So we forked out about $7,000 in roof expenses in the past 6 months. Luckily, we have been just stockpiling money since the portfolio became a little bit more producing cash flow. Once we got some private money lenders paid off, once that stuff was happening, it became really easy to start putting cash aside. So for really about 7 months now, no, actually longer than that now, about a year now, we've been setting aside about $1,100 a month, which has been huge, absolutely huge. And we haven't really had to take money out of it for taxes. We've been really lucky with cash flow, just having money in the checking to pay that sort of stuff. But I think it's going to kind of start to catch up with us now. So we did just do the two roofs. We have at least another 2.5 roofs that we want to get through this year. There's actually one roof that when we bought the place, there was a remnants of blue tarp on the ground after the grass melted. And we're like, why is there remnants of blue tarp? So we take up a Google photo, a Google satellite photo, and my brother's like, yeah, at some point, it looks like in last year, there was a full tarp on this roof. I'm like, I haven't heard anything from the tenant. There's been no evidence of any leaks whatsoever. So that was 2 years ago now. There's still no evidence of any leaks. There's no tarp left on the roof. There's little segments of blue tarp, but it's not really a tarp anymore. But there's still no leak. So it's really kind of confusing us. So we know for sure we're going to get that one looked at, probably replaced. That's a flat roof, which is really fun because you have to get a roofer that knows how to do flat roofs. And 2, that requires hot tar, which a lot of roofers are not too keen on working with just because of obviously sort of the liability of it. And my dad can speak to that. He actually grew up as a kid. He actually grew up with working on roofs with his uncles who were roofers, and he actually had a hot tar spill on his arm, and there's still scars from it. So, I mean, that stuff is wicked. So we've got 2 flat roofs at that property we're going to do. We're also going to be looking at possibly paving some of our gravel driveways. Our properties right now, except for one of them, well, technically 2 of them, I guess, have pavement driveways, but the other 2 have gravel. And the real big downside of gravel is that when it rains, it gets really horrible at one of the properties in particular because there's these large divots where you just get huge puddles and you get a lot of flooding and stuff with the gravel. So I plan on trying to at least get 1 or 2 of those driveways actually with asphalt paved on it before the end of the summer. One of them in particular, I know the tenant will be really happy. He has kind of his own private driveway, even though it's a quad. It's just the way the driveway is placed for him. And anytime we get any serious amount of rain, not necessarily build your ark level of rain, but just, a typical monsoon you might get once in a while in a season, it's really hard for him to drive his car all the way up the driveway because there's this one section where it just becomes a pool. So I know he would really enjoy having a paved asphalt driveway. I'm looking at asphalt because it is relatively cheaper up front. And that's really sort of the biggest thing I'm looking for right now because, again, I've got the roofs I'm looking at. Those are things that we really should be looking at for sure. I kind of feel like I want to start replacing some furnaces too because furnaces are getting to be 20, 25 years old. And I'd like to be sort of ahead of the game and not have to deal with them in the emergency situations. So I'm sort of feeling like I want to get maybe 1 or 2 of the asphalt driveways done. I want to get 2 more roofs done. And then I maybe want to start replacing furnaces, maybe one of the oldest. And then obviously that other unit I talked about, if I get it back sooner than a year, I would definitely be putting that furnace in. So we're talking, about $25,000 or so being spent on those parts of the properties. And I just got a lovely letter from the city a couple weeks ago that, hey, we've passed a piece of legislation that's requiring the lead surface be removed from all properties. And we're going to make you pay for like the majority of it. Hooray. So again, at the 1860s property, we've got to have this lead pipe pulled out from the front yard, replaced, sidewalk put back in place, and we've got to have all this done. I got my bid from it. I've gotten a couple bids. So the one I'm going with, this is actually my guy who's my roofer. He's going to do it for about $4,900. The city's going to give me like $2,500. And I'm like, all right, well, I guess we'll be okay with that then. So again, another expense that sort of was not seriously planned on, but we've got to get it done. At least there's flexibility. The city is saying they just want it done before the end of the year, which I'm fine with that. I'll do it before the end of the year. I'm not going to promise it'll be towards the first half of the year, but I'll do it before the end of the year. So sort of capital expenditure and like property improvement, that's what we're kind of dealing with right now. The other issue that we've sort of really had come to the forefront is how our properties are increasing in rent value more than we can increase the rent every year for the tenants. So let me kind of explain that better. When we took this over, we had units that were on average between $50 to $75 under market rate. Not really a huge deal. Something that could easily be brought in line with $15 increases, assuming that the market itself did not appreciate that substantially. Well, fast forward 18 months later into our investment career, and guess what started to happen? Rents started appreciating dramatically in the area. Which, I mean, okay, I'm not complaining because that's great, because then as we had people move out, we were getting then even on average about 125 more per unit, which great, fantastic. But we have these, I think it's 4, what I call original tenants now, who are drastically under market rate because our agreement of doing 15 to 20 per year is now not keeping up with the way the market has appreciated. Here's a realistic example. We have one tenant who pays about $350 in rent. His market rate for the place right now is $675. That is incredible. And the majority of that has come in the past 24 months. So the majority of that discrepancy has come in the past 24 months. Well, I should say 36 months because it was pre-COVID actually. So really the past 3 years, that's when the majority of that discrepancy has come from. And it's just been crazy to think that now this person is about $175 off the low point of market rent. So we've got some serious work to do here. And part of it is just acknowledging the fact that we need to make some huge rent increases here. Now, we're going to do it in what is, I think, a humanely acceptable fashion. We're in the process of writing letters to the tenants individually based on their building. So we have a letter written that's going to the tenants of the quad that says, in the past 6 months, we have replaced roofs. We've replaced 3 roofs. However, we can no longer have the rent rates that we have now, which are drastically under market rate, and continue to improve the property. So over the next, I think we said 24 months, you will have a total rent increase of this. Over the next 8 months, you can expect a total rent increase of this. And in the last paragraph, we've explained, in case you're wondering, the market rate for your for your unit right now is X. So in this letter, they're being told that, hey, we've made property improvements. We want to continue to improve the property, but we really can't do it when our unit rates are so drastically under market rent. So we're letting them know that, hey, these rent increases are coming. We're upfront with you. they're going to go to this much. And FYI, this is what market rate is right now for your type of unit. So right now you pay $605. Well, market rate for yours would be $695. So you're still getting a good deal at the end of this, because 2 years from now, your rent is going to be $675, $685. So we're being upfront with them. We're also letting them know that, hey, you're still getting a really good deal. And if you think you want to go look, just so you know, it's not going to be as cheap as what you're going to get here. And I think this is actually a really good way to approach it, rather than just sending out rent increases that, number one, have no explanation and are very large in size. Giving them the heads up that this is happening, it gives them a little time to kind of think about it and understand what they might need to change if they want to still live there, but also maybe entertain their options, what's out there right now. The other thing is explaining. Just offering the explanation that, hey, we are making improvements, you've seen them, but in order to kind of continue to do it, we need to have more cash flow coming in. So I think it really goes a long way, if you find yourself in that situation, to approach it with an upfront letter to the tenants before they get any sort of lease renewal that says, hey, your rent's going up by $75. And that's the other thing, is because we have tenants that are all month to month right now, what we're actually doing is we're splitting it up over like 8 months for the big chunks. So everyone is getting their first rent increase between now and September. And the first one is going to be the smaller of the two. So if we're looking to get somebody up by $95, the first one they're getting is $35. And then the second one they're getting is $40. So the first one they're getting between now and September. The second one they'll get about 8 months later. We're not waiting a full year because they are so far behind and they are month to month. And we're kind of staggering it based on busy season. So for some people it'll be 8 months. For other people, it might just be 6 months, because we don't want to find ourselves issuing another rent increase, let's say in July, and only having 2 months of busy season left. So we're trying to be sort of logical with when we're issuing these as well. And that's why they're a little bit shorter. Now, I can do that here in Wisconsin. If you don't rent in Wisconsin or you don't invest here, definitely check your state statutes, because I know some states out there, even if your tenant is on a month-to-month lease, I know there are a few states that say you can only raise the rent like one time in a certain period. So whether it be 12 months or whatever. So definitely be sure and check your state statutes before you go off and do it and say, well, I heard on a podcast, because what I do here might not apply in North Dakota, New Mexico, Oklahoma, wherever you are. That was 26 minutes of what's going on with our portfolio and what we're kind of looking at this year. I hope you guys enjoyed sort of pulling back the curtain on this. I wanted to talk a little bit more about the property management company side of it, but again, coming up on 26 minutes, I'm running short on time here because I really want to keep these episodes below 30 minutes, and usually I aim for 20 minutes tops. But I hope you guys have enjoyed this chatty update. As my brother and I acquire and make these deals this year, I will definitely have another chatty episode or two so I can talk to you about our new properties and sort of give you a deal diary of how it came about, what we bought, and then sort of a little bit of how it's turned out thus far in the first 30 days. All right, I hope you guys are having a fantastic week. Hit me up over on Instagram at landlordchick for any questions you have, or if you want to follow me and see what I'm doing. I'm going to try and get better with doing stories over there. A couple of you have asked for just even small stories about updates on the portfolio, things like that, what I'm doing. So in the future, I'm going to get better about that. Maybe doing stories about, maybe realistically, let's say 2-3 times a week. But I'll start to bring you guys into my world a little bit more over on Instagram. So I hope to see you guys over there at Landlord Chick. Other than that, have a great week. Enjoy the wonderful weather. It's spring here in Wisconsin. It's spring in the North Atlantic continent. So go out, enjoy it, and really get some fresh air, because we all deserve it after everything we've been through for the past 13 months now. Yeah, 13 months. Have a great day, guys.